Good evening. My own acquaintance with Gauri was actually formed over a few brief encounters between 2014 and 2007. We met actually in Delhi. At occasions like this, to speak about both the state of the media and the state of the country, it was quite clear what was happening. And I think one thing was clear, rather than larger ideological positions, there was an attitude that I think we all need to share with us, which was that you don't aim, you don't give up. There is a need for persistence, whatever the electoral mandate, whatever the changes in society that we are dealing with. Today I want to stay with the idea of reconstructing the fourth estate. I mean, the fourth estate today, at least the part of it that works, has been literally called the fifth columnist of the state today. We are anti-nationalists. We are supposed to be doing something that undermines the structure of the state. But this is happening at a certain moment in time where something is very evident before us, but it still needs to be spelled out. I think Baba mentioned 22nd. At the time the national flag was actually adopted, we are all aware the RSS had rejected it. They did not want the national flag, they did not want the tricolor, they wanted the Bhagwa flag instead. From 2014 onwards, they used the national flag, waved it in our faces. But in the end, they do not shy away from their stated goals. Everything they have done today, they've been announcing through their history of 100 years. On 26 January, me and my partner, we were speaking to one of the young boys who distributes the flags at the street corners. And the number of flags that were being picked up this year were far lower than any other year. In houses, in colonies, through Delhi, all you could see on Jan 26th was the Bhagwa video. The transition that the RSS wants is a transition that goes back to what they had always announced. They are not interested in the tricolor. The Bhagwa is the reality, its symbolism, its constitutional provisions await us as we go into the next 4 or 5 years. But how was this reality constructed? We pay a lot of attention to the ideology of the RSS, what it conveys, to the work the RSS has done on the ground. But there is also the question of reality itself and how it is constructed. We saw it in the run to Ayodhya. I can quote dozens or maybe hundreds of liberal intellectuals in Delhi, media persons who were saying the Ram Temple, the appeal of the Ram Temple has run its course. But the fact is, the media was used and even it was structured, it was propagated and broadcast into every of our homes, and it did what it was expected to do. This reality that was constructed is the reality that has come before us. A lot of us were bemused when Narendra Modi would pay the kind of attention he did to the G20 when I was traveling through Madhya Pradesh for the state elections. In place after place, all that I encountered from people was that India has reached a place on the world stage that was never possible before. You could inquire about why they thought so, what was the achievement, what made them think so, why did they believe so. It didn't matter. These were small hamlets, these were small villages. I'm talking of feedback from across castes. This was a reality that had been constructed for them, and this is the reality that had taken hold. This reality is not possible without control over the media. When I speak of the media, I talk largely of the mainstream media because we do spend a lot of time with the independent media, the work the independent media does, But if we've been largely allowed to escape unscathed, and not all of us have escaped unscathed, I think, is because the complete control over mainstream media is unprecedented. There is only one reality. You can have a number, you can have tens of channels in English, maybe 50 channels in Hindi, 100 channels in regional languages, all of them are broadcasting the same message. And this is what is going everywhere. And we need to understand why this control came to be. I do want to distinguish, we often speak of the words media and journalism interchangeably. These are not interchangeable words. This is media, the television is media, the internet is media. The control of the sources of communication is media. It is the difference between mistaking hospital structure and the doctors themselves. Journalism is journalists themselves are akin to what doctors are in the structure of a hospital. And the media is this larger superstructure over which there is complete control. So when we use it interchangeably, we often make a mistake of, we've had several surveys on diversity within the newsroom. But you know, it is a huge problem. It is largely upper caste. It is largely, if you look at editors from liberal to what you would call Gauri media, you will see not even just upper caste, but largely Brahmin dominated at the position of editors. But there is a more important absence of diversity if you turn your lens to the media. Who owns the media? If you examine the diversity there, that diversity is shocking. The media is in the hands of a handful of people, largely drawn from one single caste, mostly Marwadis, some Baniyas, Khatris, but almost all from the mercantile class. And when I am emphasizing these things, I am not saying these things are totally deterministic. There are individuals within these caste structures who will behave differently, but there is a worldview that comes with caste and forces. If you have this kind of dominance, it forces something to happen. The media was not very strong before Modi or BJP came to power. The media was subservient. But there was a diversity because there was not the same kind of centralized, organized control that exists. There is a second. The mercantile caste has been one of the prime movers of Hindutva, the RSS, and this ideology right from its inception. So for the first time in 2014, you see for this media ownership, coming together of business interests. Media has to work with government, large owners who own capital, have to work with government because their finances are in some senses held controlled by the government. But in this case, there was an ideological matching between the government and the media ownership. It was not simply a case of media acting because there was pressure from the government. Much of the media today is behaving in this manner because this is the kind of government it wants, this is the kind of country it wants, this is the kind of ideology it wants. Journalists, the vast majority in mainstream media are not being forced to do what they are doing. They are doing it out of their own free will, and this is the structural problem that we are facing in terms of media. This is the question of who owns media, question of ownership. In comparison to this, what is happening with journalism itself is important, but second, because as long as there is no diversity of ownership, there is no diversity of worldviews in ownership, there is no diversity in terms of people who can fund large media, you are not going to get journalism that is going to examine a government or hold it to account. Which is why, as we go into an election, as we talk to each other, we need to reaffirm our commitment to journalism that asks questions to power, but we also need to establish how that is to be done. This is why at this point of time we need the kind of reports that are being prepared, the kind of things we are ourselves in the press club debating, what are the kind of mandates that we need to put up, something that if not this government, at least the opposition should be part of the charter. Because we didn't get here with just this government doing this to media. We got here with the opposition doing the same thing to the media. They have to come on board with the idea of transparency of ownership, an examination of ownership, an examination of funding of media, who owns media. There is more questions asked of a journalist when he is employed as a trainee or she is employed as a trainee than are asked of a media owner before a media owner wants to start an organization. We have no idea of funding, spending, what is happening in a newsroom, what is happening in media ownership. This has to go beyond just simply the kind of declarations we have for other companies. There is something else that comes with a certain responsibility when you enter into the zone of media. So the question of media ownership, its examination, is something that has to be a mandate that we must enforce and get the opposition on board to enforce. We need to go beyond just the question of media ownership and look at the relationship between media ownership and journalists. Because you can have independent journalism if you have independent media, fair enough. But sometimes you can have good journalism even in media houses that are bad. We have all worked, some of our best work or reportage has happened in corporate owned journalistic organizations. I have seen that myself. What needs to be done is to build up more protections between ownership and journalists who are working. The owner's ability to command or dictate the thrust and the norm of what a journalist is, the kind of protections journalists much enjoy. That means not just in terms of salary, it means in hire and fire and dismissal. Must all be part of what we put on the table. And I am saying this must happen because even when we are talking of independent media houses, even the small independent media houses are not implementing the kinds of policies that need to guarantee this for journalism. It is not sufficient that we teach lessons to large media organizations. If we are forming small independent media journalistic organizations, they must subscribe to values that then we can hold up in terms of employers, in terms of journalists, that we can hold up to large media organizations. We must remember that ultimately it goes up to the question that I raised in the beginning. I led there because there are a lot of specifics, and those specifics have been discussed at the workshop, so I'm not going into all of them. But those nitty-gritty details are important. If we do not focus on those details, we talk only in large terms, we are going to make the same mistake that we often make in journalism. Opinion is great, but in the end, it is reportage that is going to change what is happening. It is reportage that is going to tell you the truth about what is going wrong with this government. We are living in a country where the concentration of intellectual and financial capital lies today with less than 15% of the population. I'm talking of the upper caste, Banyan control. This is an unevenness of resources that has extended for over 1,500 years in India that was not matched even by apartheid South Africa. At its height, the white population of South Africa was greater than the upper caste population of India is today, and it did not have the same amount of control. This is the structure that this government is keen to preserve, while it is inclusive in terms of drawing in EBCs, OBCs, even Dalits. It is drawing them in a manner which does not question the hierarchy of their presence within this Varna system. The repeated indication by Bhagwat of the importance of not questioning the Varna system lies here. So yes, the larger question of how that is to be changed can only begin by asking these questions. These questions cannot be asked without independent journalism, independent media. That cannot exist till we don't look at sources of funding, possibilities of how we set up different structures, how we change the reality that is beaming into every house. And that ultimately is our going. It will not happen today or tomorrow, but we need the hard work, reports, writing, questions, actual positions.